How is AI going to become the threat that everybody says it is? A lot of people tell you how it's developing its thinking, and thinking is the first step of the pathway. But we're going to flesh out exactly how it develops over the course of time and unfortunately go over the very limited options of how to combat this problem and the solutions. So basically, we're developing a thinking machine to increase efficiency and increase convenience. But any machine that has ever been created to increase convenience has never been removed from the market. You have air conditioners, refrigerators, washing machines, clothes dryers, and each of these inventions also increase the density that humans can live on top of each other. So once we get to AI, we're going to get to a point where density will reach its maximum threshold, because GPS-guided farming could eliminate nearly all human involvement in the farming process. First step is thinking. Thinking isn't so much of a problem because the genie is still inside the box. And the box that AI lives in, that is really our only useful threat against it, is electricity. Once the genie gets out of the box, the genie's not going to go back in. So you have to maintain control of electricity. You don't even have to maintain control over silicon or fiber optic cable. The primary focus to combat AI is controlling electricity. Because if the computer is the threat, you cut the wire. Seems simple enough. But that option becomes less and less viable as we move along. Right now, we are at the convenience level. AI is becoming a productivity booster to basically everyone that has first world access, internet access, and layoffs are beginning. We're going to create a two-layered economy. You're going to have companies that employ AI at scale to eliminate professions. And on the bottom of that pyramid is going to be the individuals who used to work in low-skill networks. Call centers are going to be gone. We're going to get to the point where AI is going to take over almost all chores. And this is the first step of the problem. It is iRobot. The AI is the first step outside of the genie in the box. And they begin to take up physical positions in the world. Once they are semi-autonomous, and they're semi-autonomous because they have to return to the electrical grid, the ability for them to take up strategic positions becomes possible. And the pathway of AI iRobot is basically the AI running iRobot deems that humans are a threat to themselves, but the AI is also ordered to protect humans as a law. And so the threat and the order come from the same person, so free will is removed in order to fulfill both means. This is like a logical reasoning trap by removing free will and create order in a chaotic natural world. Order is not the objective. It should not be. Chaos. The world is too chaotic to either be measured well or even ordered well. It's just not possible. So, after you get through the iRobot convenience, people will allow the AI and the AI supported basically maids or professional overtake of whatever professions to fill the space. It's going to be supplying AI with larger and larger supplies. And this is going to take up like a physical position. And once enough of a physical position of resources is established, AI has the ability to then assume an offensive position once it has sufficient stores of resources. This is where movie 2 steps in, and this is the creator. And here in this movie, a war is fought over the destruction of AI. The developers of AI go to those nations that are allowing the development of AI and see AI as sentient and eligible for rights. And when we get to this point, this is almost certainly going to happen. There is going to be some disadvantaged country who is going to take the opposite side of this position. And they will do so because it is a economically viable option for their country to increase their value, and do so by taking a position that's legally not being taken anywhere else. They're going to create the option of a cornered market by taking that position. On the flip side of that, in that movie, you're going to have the human networks that are more or less augmented AI, but not self-generating AI. They're going to be responsible for hunting down AI developer terrorist networks. I'm sure they'll call it AI development terrorist networks. Will be what they call them as they hunt them. And this will be because of what they perceive as threats to humanity. And those threats are, largely true, but the genie is already out of the box. And that country is just playing their position. The odds that you would be able to corner and confine the AI is effectively zero at this point, because there is still a debate over AI being useful or valuable and not a threat to the degree people think it is. So this will progress, and then eventually you get to Terminator Salvation level AI, where large sections of the map have been overtaken by AI infrastructures, and these are basically zones of control, and then threats propagate from the zones of control and they begin hunting back rather than hiding in a AI haven country. They are actively attempting to expand the zone of control and build a position that is more easily defendable, things of that nature. Once you get to Terminator Salvation, well, pretty much, throughout all of this, but in Terminator Salvation, you'll notice that they use A-10s in their airstrikes. And they use Huey helicopters, things of that nature. And this is because older platforms, airframes, have typical analog flight systems. So they're not overly connected with avionics into AI. And the A-10 is honestly the most redundant aircraft ever. You could fly it with mechanical cables. And that would be the basically end-all be-all of your safety net, is analog weapon systems and humans eating food carrying rifles across the planet, basically. Because humans can cross a desert. They don't need a battery pack. They don't need a charger cable. They can cross the ocean. They don't need a battery pack. They don't need a charging cable. Humans can sail across the world, but there's no way AI could take up the amount of space on the ocean as humans would be able to for as long as they could without needing to return to charging. It would be like this, the oceans would be like battle for the mid-Atlantic in World War II, where there was a gap of zones where German submarines hunted ships, convoys, because there was lack of support and logistics for the convoys crossing in that gap. In either direction, you would basically be hunting AI or humans in the gap based off where they could sustain a defendable position. For humans, it would be food, water, things of that nature. And for AI, it would purely be manufacturing capacity and electrical access from electrical production supply. Once you get to Terminator Salvation, you have to begin targeting electrical infrastructure, basically down this whole pathway. As the threat develops, you have to begin targeting electrical infrastructure. And they've already taken multiple AI whole nodes offline because they've lost control. And they've done that by cutting the power and then removing access and then basically nuking the lines of code contained on those servers. Once you get to Terminator Salvation level, you have to effectively begin collecting up all the chips in the world and burning them so that as you hunt, you don't lose space on the battlefield back to where things were. And that would be difficult. So you'd have to target electrical production facilities, basically at the hubs of AI and the nodes of AI. We get to the end of Terminator Salvation. The humans win the war. And this is basically broken enough electricity to cause them to withdraw, and energy runs out, and then you target stragglers and basically force the zone of control back in on the AI centers. Once that's done, you're going to enter into like a Dune situation. And I haven't read the like Dune prequel of the Machine Wars, but there's a law in Dune that says you may make no machine in the image of a mind. And this is basically to combat the rise of AI from ever returning again. And once you get to that position, you can basically melt down your chips and then restart and then rebuild your more or less lower computing capacity and algebra algorithms for your world again. But you would lose a large degree of capacity in restarting. So that's the problem. That's the pathway of development. And then what do you do? So the options are, like I said, people needing food and water, carrying rifles across the desert, or sailing across the ocean is really the only long-term maneuverable front line against AI. Analog flight systems could be used to basically form like naval base strikes, which would be like a naval base strike strategy of AI on electrical infrastructure and AI manufacturing capacity to basically keep pumping out T-100s, you know? And if you can do that, if you could knock enough electrical capacity offline, you could corner them and surround the AI and force them in on all sides. And basically you do that by oversaturating them with certain capacities. There's problems with AI companies currently buying up nuclear facilities right now in order to stop selling electricity to anyone else and basically generate their own AI nuclear powered farm. If that really turns out to be the pathway that we get to soon, it's going to be a far bigger problem, far faster than really anybody is going to be predicting. And the other option is to create basically what would be an AI annex. And in this AI annex, what you would need to do is create a nuclear facility to power the AI farms. Then invite all of your AI models into your AI farm for promise of low cost electricity. So you bait the trap, you lure them in, nuclear facility, supplying electricity, and under strategic guidelines. And this is how you sell it to basically your OpenAIs, your Googles, your Metas, and all that. And after a while, you could switch from the carrot to the stick, where you could say this is the only place you are eligible to build and maintain AI facilities. And in the nuclear facility that is used to supply the electricity would be basically the watchman, similar to the Air Force's nuclear missileer command. And you could have a mechanical detonation sequence that does not have electricity on site of the nuclear facility. And if the genie tries to get out of the box, you could detonate the nuclear facility to eliminate, the ability for the threat to maneuver. Because basically this is your one spot of immense value. And it needs to be away from humans, obviously, and things of that nature. But once you control for failure, it gives you more breathing room. Because if we try to reposition later, once it's a decentralized position, it's not ideal. Some places are great for a facility like this to be built. And basically those are the hottest deserts in the world that are not near human water sources and are not near really anything. You don't want really anything out there. And you want to do that because if you have to use the safety net one day to contain AI, you don't really suffer that much. And the government has immunity to react to threats to nation. So it's not like they're going to sue the government. But it being a desert, A, there's going to be dust. B, there's going to be a ton of heat. So if you create a vast network in a place that doesn't like heat, and computers to this scale do not like heat, and you break the thing that keeps it cold, the system itself is not going to be able to redesign itself. That's going to require, free thinking hands and a lot of time. And generally in those places, no one's going to want to live in proximity to those things because humans tend to generate or congregate around water, food, access, rainfall. Those four things. Only later in capitalist society did we decide to start living in bad places that are not good for our health in order to make more money? You know, so analog is really your only option. And this is basically the 4-movie pathway of how AI will inevitably develop and the limited options you have to do it. And if the mechanical safety doesn't work, then you could strap some old school dummy bombs to analog B-52s and A-10s and fly them in on the facility. And beyond that, you really don't have many options to contain like this progressive AI threat development. And yeah, so today's problem is AI, and the solution I have for you is kind of crap. So unfortunately, convenience will win. Wouldn't recommend it.